Sure.
prayer of the Bab. If you'd
Yes,
like to.
please.
Go ahead.
Okay, let
We
me
would
bring
love
my
to.
computer.
Yes. So welcome everyone. We're going to be starting with a prayer. Welcome everyone on YouTube. Welcome everyone on Facebook. All are welcome to join this Zoom meeting. We're going to start first with a prayer, and we'll get to the introductions for today. So again, welcome, and please, if you have something to share, we're very happy to have you participate. And more importantly, if you have comments and you're on Facebook or YouTube after the fact, we're monitoring, so we'll do our best to get back to you within a reasonable time. So we're going to have one of the Zoom participants to start us off with a prayer. And for those of you who are just joining us, your prayers are welcome, so you're more than welcome to offer them. We're happy to have them.
All right. I don't have a good voice, but I try. Let me know if you hear it well.
Yeah, we hear it.
All right. هل من مفرج غير الله قل سبحان الله هو الله كل عباد له وكل بأمره That was it. Thank you.
Great.
So welcome everyone. Welcome. We're so happy to have you. We are right now on our Jeremiah 21st session, yes?
No, 20th.
Jeremiah.
Session.
The 20th session. I'm too far ahead of myself here. The 20th session. So we did 19 last week. It is today is April. Oh my God, I'm forgetting the date. 24th, April 24th, 2023. We are celebrating the Festival of Ridvan. It is a 12-day festival, and we've just celebrated the first day on Friday, and now coming up, we'll be celebrating together the 9th day of Ridvan. So all are welcome to come to the center, enjoy the food and the company, and we're going to, of course, observe the holy day. With that being said, we also have, as a matter of continuing these sessions, a focus on this growth that we're doing together. We're trying to read the writings and observe what the writings from the Baha'i faith say about creating a moral society. Mr. Gilbert Hakim started off in the first session explaining a few points as to how if we view the scientific advancements that we have and we use them as tools, such as the subject of efficient cause, of AI and machine learning, and in line with the Holy Spirit, using the laws from the Holy Spirit, that is the revelation of God, now the last that we currently have, the Baha'i writings, we are able to understand how we can create a society that is efficient, that is just, that cares about people, and at the same time creates a functioning society where everyone can benefit and partake of its fruits, not just, again, suffer in the society, but to benefit and be happy. So with that being said, we spoke on the subject of what is right and wrong, in addition to what is good and bad for us, what is right and wrong in the situation at hand, and how do we approach various situations. So right now we are speaking on the subject of love, the love of God for humanity, the love of, us for God, and so forth. We've spoken about 4 types of love over the past 2 weeks. We spoke about the subject of love, the love of God for us, and how we can express that love as well. So with that being said, love for humanity is the subject now as we continue. And you may ask, why is love important? Well, building a moral society, there's more than just laws that you find between human beings. There's the laws of reality. The laws of our spiritual reality are what allow humans like you and me to right now sit down in an ordered, civilized society. What is the motivating force behind these laws? Well, we're asserting love is a very important motivating force. And Mr. Hakim is going to continue where we left off. We are happy to have you, and please bring your ideas, thoughts. We want to have a discussion as we move along. So we thank you for, if you're watching this, joining us in this way. And more importantly, those of you on Zoom, please contribute. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, before we start, we just need to mention why we're in this position today, and why, obviously, when the humanity as a whole adopted a particular religion, it was very difficult from moving away from it. And most of it was because in the writings they were mentioning that, for example, in Christianity, skies may fall, but my word would never change. So these comments like this, and of course, misinterpretation of these comments, similarly in Muslim religion. But essence of the messengers of God is propagation of religion. And Abdu'l Baha mentions all religions are designed to basically be propagated through the entire world. But when you're looking at history of humanity, at the time of Jesus, there were barely 270 million people. And the most fastest way of transportation was probably with camels and donkeys. And would, in few days, you would cross probably to the neighboring village. So, and similarly, during Muhammadan times, there were about, I think, 700 million people at the time. And interestingly, the process to propagate the message was the only way was to basically take the message and bring this message to other countries. But majority of the case, in case of Islam, for the first 30 years, it was propagation of religion through conquering those areas. And ironically, because of the caste system that existed at the time, people of those regions would revolt against their own government and accept Muslims as liberators, basically. Obviously, at the time, it was Persian Empire and Roman Empire that were in war for decades and decades and depleted coffers and taxing the peasants. And so everybody was basically in duress. And so that's how the message of new manifestation was supposed to be spread. Ironically, after domination within the Middle East, majority of the spread of Islam through Far East, even to Russia and China, went through merchants and was through travelers of dervishes, which were part of the Sufi branch of Islam that spread the Islam. So the purpose wasn't wars. The purpose was spread of the message of God. So the question really becomes of, ironically, Muslims today, they believe that Islam spread through force, which was completely false. They were bringing the message to other countries, and obviously they were being attacked and they were defending themselves. So that was the official purpose of the spread of religion, because there was no other tool to do that. And of course, after Muhammad, divisions occurred in Islam, and it created its own dynasty of caliphates and went at the wrong direction. But overall, the purpose was spread of the religion. Now, what happens when you come to the era of communication and you freely can spread your ideas and messages that you have, there is no need for conquering anything, because you're free to spread your message. So that's why Baha'u'llah abrogated basically jihad, or fighting to spread the message, because it was not necessary. So those people in the Islamic countries still believe, of course, for their own sake, that description of Quran, which was related to the first 30 years, not the first 10 years. The first 10 years was all basically spiritual teachings of Islam. And the following 20 years that skirmishes and wars and conquest occurred was related to spread of the message itself. So the point is that current believers of Islam believe that they can, to use the elements of Quran, they have to create wars just to make sure that they can use those basically surahs in the Quran, which was predicated by being in a condition of war. Now, when the condition of war doesn't exist today, because you can spread the message of God in any shape or form you want, and there is no barrier to spread of the message, there is no need for war. And this is really the key. That's why those laws that were related to condition of war is completely unnecessary and cannot be used. But obviously, the goal of all of the religion was to unite the mankind to whatever means that was at their disposal. So this issue regarding basically revolution of scientific revolution that occurred that allows communication from each corner of the world in matter of seconds, completely abrogate the methodology that would use over 1400 years ago. So these are the key elements where those religions by themselves were designed to unite humanity also. But obviously, because of interference of the learned people or clergy, it went astray. And that's why many revelations of Baha'u'llah points at that: abrogation of war, abrogation of calling someone infidel or something clean or unclean. So this thing completely erased the barriers that are prejudices against other religion that existed at the time just for the protection of the faithful no longer is valid. And the new manifestation, which is Baha'u'llah, has broken that. So you cannot take today the instruction set of 1400 years ago and expect to unite mankind. It's not possible. Same thing with Christianity. So this end of time that Baha'u'llah talks about in Iran, which Christians are translating that that the sun would rise from the west and the stars would fall and sun would go dark, relates to learned people of that religion. That means those shining ecclesiastical structures would cause harm to humanity and they fall. So that's really the translation, and then the light of Muhammad and dispensation would go dark. So these are the interpretation of it. That's when the end of time occurs and new manifestation would come. So short of the elimination of prejudices of any kind, the unification of humanity is not possible or practical for that matter. So now we're going and reading this and seeing that with that predicate, how Baha'u'llah or Baha'i religion reminding the previous religious orders of the true intention of their religion. Please go ahead. Any questions so far? Okay. Let me check this. Okay. Somebody wants to read?
I can read first here. Take pride not in love for yourselves, but in love for your fellow creatures. Glory not in love for your country, but in love for men, for all mankind. Take pride not in love for yourselves, but in love for your fellow creatures. Glory not in love for your country, but in love for all mankind.
So as we know, we are created, and we are all created in the image of God. So we all have innate characteristics of love of God in all of us, which is obviously hidden, and we need to work to develop it, to bring it to reality. So here it says that the love for kin or your family or your tribe or your religion is not sufficient to bring about. And you cannot look at other people because of their religion or opinion to be different than yourself. And your job is to love them and educate them. And it's up to them. You have to present to them the facts of the new revelation. And as we see for last basically 100 years, the messages of Baha'u'llah has seeped into every echelon of society. And of course, it started with the basis of the individual human rights in 1946, I believe, with United Nations, that defined value. Baha, by the way, means value. So value of humanity, value of each human, because it's created in the image of God, it has a value. And we need to cherish that value, regardless of what opinion they have. So these are the key elements regarding expanding the love of family or tribe or country to know that collectively, through collaboration, unity of mankind, everybody's lives becomes better, because you would be able to eliminate wars, eliminate this basically discrepancy between level of existence. So these are the key elements that we need to look at. Where does this love for mankind comes in? Is because it relates to you as well. As we know, the poet, when you go to United Nations in Farsi, that says Bani Adam a'zای یک پیکرند که در آفرینش یک گوهرند. So that means that we are all linked together from the same body. چوزوی به در داورد روزگار دگر عضوها را نماند قرار. So if some portion of this body gets hurt, the other organs would feel the pain if you're part of the same body. And that's really the goal of the Baha'i religion, unification of mankind. And of course, slowly seeping into a spiritual psyche of the whole world, but it's still the barriers of prejudices, which artificially is placed based on false ecclesiastical interpretation of their own text, is causing this division and creating a barrier for people to become knowledgeable about science of God, actually. So this is really interesting. In Iran, it mentions that learned people of other religions or ecclesiastical structures, they're like vultures, or they're a beast that devour the brains of basically common man. It's that severe of the analogy that Baha'u'llah uses of how this basically people are enslaved because of the ideology that is caused by these quote unquote learned people. So those are the barriers that's the sole reason Baha'u'llah basically banished or abandoned the class of clergy. Its usefulness has been terminated. Okay, any comments on this?
Actually, I have a question if no one else does. And
Sure.
this is specifically highlighting the glory not in love for your country, but in love for all mankind. Is the reason that Baha'u'llah mentions about this concept of removing, is it removing nationalism in order to be able to have world unity, or is there some measure of nationalism from a cultural standpoint that's still acceptable? Like I'm
No,
trying
no,
to
of
figure out.
course, this is not denying anything. You need to cherish your language. You need to cherish the place of birth that you come from, or your culture that you come from, your heritage. What he's saying is that there is one layer of love which is higher, which you have the love for mankind, that you're not going to cause harm to anybody in the name of cherishing your country. You see, they're not in conflict at all. That's really the key. Ironically, because it's an efficient cause, both sides benefit. If you go against because you want to take away some portion of somebody else's rights, you both fail. And this is what Baha'u'llah is trying to say. Only through unification of mankind you can eliminate wars that is causing chaos in the world. And there, I'm sure you have read Iran, and it's direct references to orphans and basically widows that these wars create, and society as a whole gets a setback, which would take decades and decades to repair the damage that it causes. It's the efficient cause, like common religion, common language, common market, free market. These are all Baha'i doctrines. Elimination of prejudice against each and every type of person, or in even references to economic condition or processes of distribution, like you should produce goods and services with where is the least expensive to produce. These are directly in the roadmap and blueprint of Baha'i society. Of course, it hasn't been developed yet, but those references are there already. And once you look at it, you see benefits of it.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
let's move on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, Wade has a comment or a question. So, and then I think Sharon has one. So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to add to that question about nationalism, that there's an interesting quote from The Guardian in which he says that the faith associated with the name of Baha'u'llah seeks to preserve the lesser loyalties. I don't have that full quote exactly in hand, but that helped me understand specifically preserve the lesser loyalties indicates that one subordinates those things, but one is also careful not to come on too strong on that. And there's a context around not whittling away the teachings of the other religions, not undermining those lesser loyalties as one seeks to promote unity. And I'm reflecting a lot in recent weeks on the different forces of disintegration and integration, and how carefully one has to associate oneself with the forces of integration, not with the forces of disintegration.
Right. You know, Abdu'l Baha mentions why people are fighting over a piece of land that ultimately is going to be their grave. Nobody's going to take that land with them. And you see it today, right? It just doesn't make sense.
Sharon, did you have something to add?
Yes, on a very basic level, from a sociological perspective, starting with the aggregate of the family in terms of love. I think we've talked about the big picture stuff. So I just, as a woman and a mother, and looking at culture and family and the propensity we already have in order to accept this revelation, because I think we're looking at all the things very respectfully that are barriers. But I think if we look at Abdu'l Baha's very simple analogy, or that he gives us of the aggregate of the family, in the family, the father, the mother, the children, everybody in that family, he points very correctly at their rights and responsibilities. Now, if we could take that and look at our countries, the way that society's ordered, for example, we could really be able to simplify a very intellectual and a wonderful understanding, but we could actually look at it from a very humanistic, the man next door, grassroots on the community level. I just think that what we're talking about a lot is the disintegrative process. But my challenge, I guess, is that I look at, hopefully, I know that humanity's in a mess, but I still think that a very loving and very merciful creator has given us ordinary human beings the tools to be able to transform and progress. And one of the things I've been meditating on is the epistle to the son of the wolf, in terms of his forgiveness for the martyrdom, the beloved martyrs, and the fact that the gift that he gives us is that his enemies brought him poison, but he himself, who, we should be looking at, has changed it into honey for his loved ones. So that's just a little kind of very down to earth contribution I just wanted to add. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, let's go to the next one.
I'll read this one. O peoples of the world, ye are the fruits of one tree and the leaves of one branch. Deal ye one with another with the utmost love and harmony, with friendliness and fellowship.
So this is clearly shows that a tree, the sap that comes from the earth, and the tree is distributing this sap, which is love of God, goes into every components of this tree. And it distributes and it's available. Now, obviously, we should cherish creation of God, because we're linked all together and we come from the same source and we're feeding from the same revelation. And God has never left us alone. So, but the job of propagation of the Holy Spirit or efficient cause is given in this dispensation through the words. So you have to deal, if you look at another person with prejudice, you would never be able to teach them anything. So you lose the purpose of your existence. And basically attributes of God that is within us, we need to reflect those so other people get attracted to the religion, because that's the only route that Creator allowed us to propagate his word, and no other way. So you have to, regardless of the status, level of knowledge, or beliefs of people, you have to deal with them with utmost love and harmony. That's the only way you can teach them. And fellowship. So the purpose is fellowship, not converting somebody. Once they learn about what is revealed, it's up to them to accept it or not. But these are prerequisites of unity of mankind. If these steps are not done, obviously we can never reach it. Okay.
Do we have any other readers, volunteers? O friends, be even as a lamp unto a gloomy world, and as a light unto the darkness. Deal ye with all the peoples of the world with the utmost love. Aloofness, conflict, and sedition have all been forbidden in this most great revelation.
So what do you see around yourself now? We're one of the richest societies in the world, and you see impression of people that they're trying to protect themselves. They're scared of each other. They see the world going the wrong direction. And this is not just my opinion, it's just the feeling of the society, because polarization has occurred already. It means that consultation has gone out the door, truth and reality has gone out the door. Nobody's interested in to hear what the other side is saying. Therefore, the first thing which is natural is to protect oneself. And obviously you see degradation of morals in the society, segregation of society is occurring in front of our eyes. And of course, there may be financial or political forces behind it, but reality doesn't change. It was interesting, I was reading over 75% of women fall into depression during the year, 75%. Over 35% of men fall into depression every year. And it's because of these negative and divisive type of information that is propagating, and people try to congregate around people that are in the same path to protect themselves. So as you see, the openness, accepting other ideas or interacting with everyone is the doctrine that the Baha'is should follow. And you see wars are occurring, people are worried about financial situation they're in, whether they can retire or not. All these pressures that are being put in this society is causing this segregation that is you see right now. But aloofness, conflict, that means you cannot create the conflict. You have to bring people together. You have to do opposite of what is happening now to show that there is a solution. We have a way of curing these ills of the society that we're facing now. Of course, morality is one of the bases, And this prostitution of language, prostitution of arts, prostitution of sciences, prostitution of politics, all these things are around us and we can see it. So we cannot say that this is a normal situation and we have to be enduring it until an invisible hand comes in and changes it. It doesn't work that way. So we're not allowed to follow the same doctrine. You have to do opposite of that. So these are really creating conflict, creating seditions are forbidden. We're here to create unity and be concerned about all aspects of life.
Gilbert,
Whether
let me,
it's spiritual, whether it's financial, whether it's environmental. So these are really the key.
Gilbert, I wanted to jump in here real quick because this word aloofness, I've never actually seen it used in this context, and it's interesting that it's equated to conflict and sedition. Is this similar? Like because I've noticed that in the writings, it's like where tolerance is no longer accepted, right? Where you have to actually show a genuine fellowship. It's like this going beyond what's acceptable. That's not necessarily doing the opposite, though. That's like that's asking for more than 100%.
No, of course. Maybe what we should do is look at the English dictionary regarding aloofness. Then I'll try to describe it.
So it means not friendly or forthcoming, cool and distant. So
that's
something
correct.
that's
How
completely
does this
acceptable
happen
now in society? You know, there's
Sorry?
a clear distance between every neighbor, in just simply one door down. You know, these things are normal, but
No, they shouldn't
this
be.
is like
See, this is the whole
according
point.
to Baha'u'llah.
That's correct. It said you should be concerned about your well-being of your neighbor. You should be engaging in terms of making sure that people around you are basically get the help that they need, whether it's through you or other methods. So aloofness, it comes from area that if it doesn't harm me, I don't care. That's what aloofness is. It means that it has no impact on me. So they're saying that that's not acceptable. If somebody is drowning and it doesn't harm you, doesn't mean that this is called aloofness. You have to go to their help. Okay, Sue wants to talk. Please go ahead.
Well, it seems to me that aloofness then, which can lead to conflict, and then that can lead to sedition, it's antithetical to the pivotal principle of the Baha'i revelation in this age, which is oneness. In the oneness,
correct,
we feel each other, we embrace each other, we engage with each other. Even if there's pain between us, we move closer to that, drawing on the love of God. That comes back to that love of humanity, comes from the love of God. So herein, it's clear why it's forbidden, because it's antithetical to the whole principle of this age, which is to return to our oneness. And so I see that trauma work is indicated, because when we experience pain and hurt with each other, the natural human response is to withdraw, to become estranged, to separate, to divide, to begin to believe that there's me and there's you, and to When I don't feel you, it's because I've numbed out. And that's a trauma response. So this is why this message of Baha'u'llah is a healing message. Because healing brings us back into our wholeness. But the path to that is pain. You know, like in the valley of love, the steed of this valley is pain. And if there be no pain in this valley, this journey will never end. So we have to be willing, for the love of God, to go through that pain with each other in order to bring the love back between us.
No, of course. But this is a good example of it. I was hearing on the radio while I was driving that it's the 5th year anniversary of the attack of the anti-Semite into a synagogue that killed 11 people and 20 other people got hurt. You see the just the concept of how could this happen in a 21st century or 20th century for that matter. So these are key elements that should be unacceptable. But we see this through segregation of society, lack of education, and having bullhorns of different sects and prejudices, as well as cults that has created due to the fact of their excluding God from every level of society. These are the result of it. And this is supposed to be the bastion of Western civilization.
But we're unhealed. We have to keep remembering that we're unhealed. We're still so early into the revelation of Baha'u'llah. And even amongst us who have received the revelation and who are still in the process, like we're doing tonight, of learning the revelation, doesn't mean that it's filtered down into a change, a transformational change in our thoughts and speech and behavior. So it's a process that is ongoing, to the extent that I think we heal as individuals through this revelation. I think only the revelation of God, this word of God, will bring about this type of healing.
Great. Okay.
Any volunteers to read? I assume you guys must love hearing me read, so I'll continue. They that are endued with sincerity and faithfulness should associate with all the peoples and kindreds of the earth, with joy and radiance, inasmuch as consorting with people hath promoted and will continue to promote unity and concord, which in turn are conducive to the maintenance of order in the world and to the regeneration of nations. Blessed are such as hold fast to the cord of kindliness and tender mercy, and are free from animosity and hatred.
Yeah, you see, it's tall order to eliminate prejudices because it's built into the culture. Same way that initially Christians were using Bible to say, for example, women should be subservient to their husband, same as slaves that are to their masters. So they were using the word of God to create prejudices and take advantage of the other side. It's very interesting that how humanity wants to basically enslave another group and create stories around it, and a lot of times relates that to the revelation itself, even within the same religion. Now you see today that Shiites are getting murdered by Sunnis in Pakistan, for example, or Afghanistan, the Hazaras, which are Shiites, are in duress because they get attacked, their mosque gets bombed, and these folks have the same religion. How could this happen? Where in Islam says you're allowed to kill your own kin? So the key really is of misunderstanding and the culture that is created by the learned people of those religions to protect their own turf, their own power, their own control. So these are really key elements. If you look, it says, if you're sincere and faithful, you should associate with anyone. You shouldn't have prejudice against anyone. But media, for example, instead of promoting the truth and unity, they do opposite. Politics does the same thing. Instead of unifying, they create divisiveness. They create division because that's how they can control people. So once this thing is known, people would not become slave of those ideologies. So unless you can basically consorting with those people, you won't be able to preach this message. And you see the reason Baha'i religion hasn't progressed as much for the first century of its existence was because of this culture that was creating a headwind, mostly created by the ecclesiastical structure, because their existence is in danger. And this is really the key. When you're dealing with ecclesiastical systems, if people would learn true revelation, the well-being of humanity, they would not look or listen to priests or imams. And these are really key elements which has to be through education to tell them what they're supposed to do to create unity and concord. And this is where the order comes in. The nations would talk to each other instead of taking arms. And of course, a lot of it has to do with nationalism, with politics. Ironically, every side loses. There is no winner in any of these conflicts. But through recognition of the value of each human being, we can resolve these issues. Blessed are such as hold fast to the cord of kindliness and tender mercy. Even if you get harmed, you're not supposed to seek revenge and are free from animosity and hatred. So in no condition you should create hatred in yourself. Of course, it's tall order and we are all walking in this path, but this is the direction, this is the guidelines. So these are elements that is given to us and the tool that allows us to create that unity of mankind. Okay, let's go to the next.
Racial prejudice. The best of deeds is to show forth love towards the people of the world.
Now you see, to engage even the laws of the land, to exercise it. You see, guards had to follow and protect a young dark-skinned lady to go to school because white school wouldn't allow basically dark-skinned people to attend their school, although it was laws of the land. So you see how people change their views and opinions that is passed on through their ancestors, and they truly believe that they're in the right. Even philosopher, the most prominent philosopher of the Western world, they had the tint of prejudice against race. And they thought that colored people have a lesser intelligence than white people have. This is from Immanuel Kant. So you see that even the most famous philosophers lacking the capacity to create a comprehensive solution, although they contributed to the advancement of the Western culture, but they're nowhere near a complete solution without paradoxes. And this is a good example of it. I think it was up to 1964 that in the South, Black people couldn't drink from a white fountain that white people would drink from. It was forbidden. You're not talking about 200 years ago or during slavery. It's probably less than 60 years ago. So you see this issue regarding prejudices, that the source of it was basically this separation of church and state, that the laws of the land has to be obeyed by, but they're getting headwinds from the culture, which came from religion itself originally, where all these prejudices were abolished in mid-1800s, that true separation of church and state. Here, church means culture, because what you see is remnant of those religions. They have lost their basically light. These stars have fallen. Their sun doesn't shine anymore. These are, if you read Iran, it will show that to you. So when this dispensation came in the middle of the worst violation of human rights, and ethics of society has gone to abyss, Baha'u'llah revealed his message. Okay, let's go to the next.
He must associate and converse with all peoples with perfect love, kindliness, and forbearance.
You know, majority of even Baha'is in basically Western culture are not familiar with this type of prejudices from religious perspective, although they felt it because of even their own family was against them sometimes, or they excommunicated them. But in Iran, it was an outcast. The Baha'i religion was an outcast, and people were looking at them as basically people without any morals. And of course, through the ecclesiastical system and clergy, especially Shiites, Sunnis are not as basically strongly against Baha'i religion. But Shiites were basically wanted to eliminate it, and they tried it with over 20,000 martyrs during Nasruddin Shah. So you see that people willingly gave up their lives not to recant their faith, which is unprecedented. In Quran, there is a word called taqiyya. That means that if your life is in danger, you're allowed to recant your faith. But in Baha'i religion, that doesn't exist. And you see the result of the harmony and respect that the Baha'i religion has earned throughout all the countries of the world that would never take up arms if we are attacked because of our religion. So forbearance and forgiveness is the message of Baha'u'llah, of any kind of prejudice, whether it's racial, language, national origin, religious, or political views. Okay, next one.
Blessed the soul who at night retireth unto his couch with his heart purified from enmity and hatred.
Yeah, this, we go through life and obviously we're exposed to elements that is against our principles and harms that comes to us, or viewing harms that comes to the society. I mean, in Iran, I remember when we left, you couldn't see anybody being hungry. There was such a cohesive community that neighbors would help each other. And the basic needs of people were met. Now, you're going forward almost 45 years, people are eating out of garbage cans because they cannot feed themselves. This is all because of the ecclesiastical structure that took power, and everything they do, they attach it to the will of God. And they created such a miserable society in one of the richest natural resources countries on earth. So it's blessed the soul who at night retired unto his couch with his heart purified from enmity and hatred. Still you can tolerate, have forbearance of what you see, even if it's not done to you. But seeing this situation creates a hatred of those people that are cause of this malady. But we should not allow enmity and hatred to enter our lives.
Love hath strange and mighty works, pure motives, pure actions, and the manifold revelations and evidences of detachment are all from this source. That is, they have proceeded, become manifest, shown forth, and been witnessed from love.
See, this issue related to creating that intimacy. Love generally relates to intimacy. You guys, I have to plug myself in. I apologize. I'm running out of power. So you guys take over until I get plugged in.
So we've had a couple of we've gone through a couple of slides so far. So does anyone have any thoughts or comments that they'd like to voice?
So separation is bad.
That much, and it's more than that. It's see, because referring back to a couple of slides ago, like a lot of things are done, whereas or a lot of common cultural norms where people are seen to work within what's acceptable. For instance, when you just said separation is bad, it's more than that. It's not that it's just bad, it's that we have to actively pursue not being separated, that kind of things. It's like again, it's giving 110%, not 100%.
Yep.
And it's working to make those kind of connections. It's almost as if, and I know I've had discussions and conversations with John and other people in regards to this concept of, well, what has to come first in order to establish this unity? Are we in some kind of proverbial chicken and egg situation, or is there really is it simply a matter of just making the effort on an individual basis that each of us have to apply in our lives, and then that essentially creates that unity?
But let's start with what is the most heinous sin you can do?
From this standpoint, from like,
No, in any, it's lying actually. You see, when you lie, you have violated the most sacred trust. And this is what's lacking in society today, because no one is truthful. People are trained to say things that benefits them, even if it misleads other people. So this love of truth has a penetrating, basically, tool and attracts people when you're truthful. So this is love of reality, love of truth, but with pure motives, pure actions. And that's the most valuable commodity today. It's allowing, creating that bond that people would trust what you say, that you do not gain benefit from converting somebody. You're just giving them information because of love of God that is in you. And this is what he says, that strange and mighty works. That's what penetrates. How is true pure motives, pure actions, and the manifold revelations and evidence of detachment. That means that you're not saying things just to benefit yourself. Even you tell the truth, even if it's against your own benefit. That's where the love comes from, and trustworthiness comes from. That you can create that relationship and intimacy with other people, that you can propagate the word of God. It's very hard to do, because in a secular society, opposite of that is true. It says that they tell you that you're naive if you say something truthful that would basically be against your benefit. So pure motives, pure action, and the manifold revelations and evidences of the detachment. That means you put your money where your mouth is. Everybody's benevolent with somebody else's money. And this is common. And people want to distribute everything. And these are the source of the malady in the society. The people believe that socialism is the solution. And guess what? Past 100 years, we have tried it. Every country that moved toward that disappeared, disintegrated. People starved to death. And the reason they think this way is because they think their free benefits that should be distributed to everyone, regardless of their capacity to produce. It's a noble idea, but it's a deadly disease, which Abdu'l Baha mentioned, even Shoghi Effendi, the same way. So all has to do with the wrong education. Liberation theology that started in late 60s, early 70s from South America seeped into, by the way, came from a Catholic doctrine, Catholic priest, which was taught by basically Russian spies of creating a communist movement through religion. And unfortunately, this socialism seeped into an educational system in South America, and then through the education system in the United States. So people even have seeped into high schools today. And they don't understand what it means. They're just looking at the utopic society that everybody is rich, regardless of whether they worked or not. So these are the key elements that you see a man-made doctrine of socialism is taking over by creating a utopic society that doesn't exist and has been tried by many, many countries, that people starve to death in those countries, but still they follow. They think it's the best solution. So these are really creates and manifold revelations and evidence of detachment. That means that you have to show that to them. Look, this is what you're asking for. Why don't you go read, research what happened to people that followed this liberation theology that is dominant even in universities? University professors that have tenures, that means that they would get salaries for the rest of their lives, and they promote, why should not everyone get the same salary that I get? He doesn't understand that if he distribute the salaries, he would get nothing if people don't work. And by the way, I'm not sure if you remember the settlers, initial settlers that came to United States, they created communes. And most of those communes just died out. People starved to death because they were sharing the crops of everyone. So people lost interest in working. And those communities just died out until one of these military governors decided to distribute the land and tell people you eat when you plant, right? And then the colonies started to flourish of individual ownership of property. When you deal with socialism, there is no state owns, and this is what people don't understand. State owns all the properties. You're just a unit of work for them, and they reward you based on your output. But you don't own anything. They can take it away from you anytime they want. So this is the essence of socialism. And of course, they presented in a different form to be acceptable. But these are really key elements in terms of detachment that you have to be able to basically apply the revelation itself in your daily life and exercise it. Looks like we're getting toward the end of the time. Any comments on this?
There's just that evidences of detachment. See that often. It's a
that means that you tell the truth regardless of the consequence, whether you benefit from it or not, whether you financially be better or worse. That's how you create that intimacy and love and attract people to the religion. And they will say everybody's for himself. That's the common word in American business. Every man for himself. And here it says opposite to that. But the detachment creates that bond. It creates trust and creates that love, the power of love. And people start to listen to what you say.
I think now is a good time to stop. So we'll open it up for any last comments or questions, and then I think we can go ahead and close out and we'll start on this slide next week. So, so do we have any questions and comments in the Zoom?
I have a question for you. I saw a few people on the news channel, I think it was 60 Minutes a year or two back. A couple of these CEOs ran on the principles of the Baha'i faith, and through the pandemic, they almost were going to be closed, and then they came through, and now they're really plentiful and really doing really well. Does the National have any idea how many businesses actually, or do they know or have any idea of companies that are run by the, run with the Baha'i faith in mind through the CEOs and everything that you see on TV, and now you're reading all about it, where like the woke thing and all that. I don't know. Is there a list of something or companies that prescribe the Baha'i faith that try to follow it? Have you ever seen something like that?
I don't believe such a thing exists. But remember, the economic conditions and supply chain events and dependencies really causes people to go one way or the other. But ironically, companies that band together and put their resources together, and people that believe in the existence and continuation of the company, as long as they're not being basically take advantage of it, they would endure even lower salaries or extended work or covering for each other. And that's really a community that you can create within those companies. But it's very difficult to decipher, because majority of the smaller business, especially the ones that were family oriented in terms of stores or restaurants or service oriented business, went out of business without any wrong of their own doing.
Yeah, I saw that. The show, it was called Good News or something, where they had these 5 CEOs that took minimum pay and gave back to their employees, but they survived through the pandemic, and they had like hundreds of employees. And one was a tech company, one was a manufacturing, and anyways, they were like 200 to 100 employees. And these 5 companies gave it all back, and then some of the employees worked the last 2 weeks without pay and did all this. And then when the pandemic broke and it came back, all of a sudden they're back in business. They all have their jobs, and now they actually employed a couple hundred more people. And I just remembered one of the CEOs gave everybody of a bonus of everything they gave up, plus an additional like $50,000 to like 300 employees. And it was in the news.
Sure.
And he said he
Right.
actually mentioned the Baha'i faith and some of the practices. So I just thought it was on a news program that I saw.
Oh, definitely. There is no question that those practices helps creating that bond that we discussed in terms of people enduring hardship to make sure that the entity survives. But you have to realize something much stronger in play. When you're dealing with industrialization, automation, artificial intelligence, the transition of the manual labor to automated process is occurring, and there is no way going back. So basically, globally, when you're looking at it, I saw a picture from Tesla factory. The whole factory, which was, I think, 24,000 square feet, there were only 2 carbon-based
people
in there.
Yeah,
Only 2.
I saw that, and they're producing 30 cars and 2 cars every 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So the problem is how to educate and retrain, and we have entered that phase of, and we haven't scratched the surface yet. In machine learning language and artificial intelligence. It's just phenomenal how fast you can replace people.
Oh, yeah.
So the question really is this is way beyond collaboration. It's the re-education of the workforce has to occur. Otherwise, you're going to have a financial upheaval where people with the information basically would enrich themselves. And you see the past 4 decades that the middle class has lost ground. And I'm sure your kids would be the first generation that would have less of a future than their parents. And this because of globalization, as well as this automation and artificial intelligence. And that route is not going to change. I mean, this is going to happen. The question is that can we apply the spiritual principle of Baha'i religion to create a smooth transition to lower weekly hour of labor, re-education of people, assignment? Unfortunately, the version of capitalism that you see today is not equipped to deal with that, because the capital can flow wherever has the most return, and they cannot stop it. They cannot block it. Unfortunately, you have a pendulum of politics that move to the left. They think by taxing rich people, they can basically solve the problem, which is completely nonsensical, because the minute they do that, and they tried it, by the way, in France a few years ago, they raised the maximum income tax to 75%. That means every dollar you earn, you only keep 25 cents. What ended up happening is that all the capital moved out, and people even relinquished their citizenship.
Wow.
Just not to pay taxes. And less than a year, I think it was about a year and a half, they reversed it immediately, because the carnage was so heavy. You cannot have a system that the capital itself loses interest to generate work.
That's what Mike Rowe, he did a thing today on the internet about the independence, letter of independence, why America, and all these guys basically signed the independence, the congressional thing to get out of the control of Great Britain. And they were talking about all these guys, Benjamin Franklin, all these guys that signed the constitutional letter, the independence thing, and how the British went and found about a bunch of them and killed them, but the rest of them survived. And now we're no longer underneath the skies of Great Britain. But if they would have been generous and kind, and they would have listened to maybe what Baha'u'llah said about being, not so greedy, we could be underneath the rule still. We could be a part of Great Britain if they would have not been such a bad group of people wanting to rob you and tax you to death, and we wouldn't have had the Boston Tea Party, and we would actually be under the control of maybe King George.
Well, I mean, there are different scenarios you can play, but in reality, this migration toward basically democracy or constitutional, right? It's always there. One way or another, it would have happened.
It's going to happen, right? Okay,
that's correct.
Just trying to give people common sense ahead of time, and if they don't,
of course.
I think it's time for us to close out.
Sounds good.
I appreciate everyone's participation, and we'll see you all next week.
Have a good night.
Wonderful evening.
Have a good night, everyone.